Just gonna call this meeting to order.
Yeah, no, he'll take the lead.
One meeting, please. Okay, roll call.
Bob Wilkerson.
Here.
Jeff Carey.
Here.
Terry Arcieri is excused. I do not see Brad Carlberg yet. Will Harris.
Here.
And Mike Stone.
Here. All right,
We got quorum at least.
good. Okay, approval of meeting summary for March 18th. Have anyone had any revisions to the minutes and stuff? No.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 18th meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Do we have any changes to the published agenda by staff or anybody? Here,
Might have one, and it might work its way into the work session. It has to do with the data sets and stuff related to the planning, comp plan, and how we build them, or how the county builds them. So it might fall into the work session.
We could ask Aaron.
okay,
when he gets on.
all right. We'll discuss it in
Yeah,
that.
that's fine.
So is Jeff gonna approve the changes, approval of the agenda? Or is it gonna be your turn? Well,
Oh,
For the agenda,
you move to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Second.
Yep.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, conflict of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest on the agenda items?
Not with any of the agenda. No.
Hearing none, we'll move on. Next meeting is going to be May 20th, same place, same time. Okay, committee and staff updates.
So the SCJ Alliance would like to know for discussion guidance documents, so that document that was all sent to you kind of late on Friday, I think it was Thursday or Friday. They wanted to know how much lead time you need for those type of documents, so not draft documents that will actually be going into the comp plan, but just discussion guidance documents, how much lead time you need.
It would be nice at least a week, usually. I mean, I got to this one right away, but I mean, if I have a week, for me at least.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
I haven't got to this one. It's been a very busy last 3 days.
Okay, with that said, let them know about a weekish.
I will let her know.
All right, thanks. Anything else?
No.
Okay,
Is there an update on the matrix at all that we had talked about?
I haven't even had the meeting with the departments yet.
Okay.
So but it's scheduled, but I haven't had the meeting yet. So I don't have anything to.
So the update is a meeting scheduled, so that's good. Great.
so you will report on it next time. right?
I will
That's-
report what I.
You'll report, okay.
Sure report.
All right, any other business, if any? Wow. All right, so now is the public comment on topics associated with the mission of the planning commission for which a public hearing is not being held. All right. We have lots of public. All right,
I'd like to make a comment.
sure.
Hello, this is Ken Van Busker. I'd like to make a comment if I might.
Comment away.
Good evening, commissioners. I look forward to your work session this evening on the comprehensive plan update, and you probably won't allow public comment during that, but I read through the stakeholder interview materials that were provided, and I find it interesting that they're now talking about concerns about topography and critical areas and zoning. I was a member of the 2004 sub-area planning group for Belfair, And pretty much at that time, it was a flat world. We didn't look at critical areas or topography, landslide hazard areas. And I had to fight like crazy just to get them to recognize that there was a critical aquifer recharge area under the downtown core of Belfair. So I look forward to watching you folks work through the work session. And I think it's important that this, stakeholders include residents as well. So thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
And thank you, Ken, for your service. All right. Hearing nothing else, we'll go to the public hearing. We have a request and we'll let staff handle it.
And because I have Marissa busy doing other stuff, I am doing a rezone. Which is fun. I had to remember how to do it.
And
It's not that difficult. So this is a proposed rezone. It's actually one parcel, but there's a portion on the west side, a portion on the east side to match the proposed future use of each side, and then the middle portion remains the same. It's just under a 5-acre piece. 1.36 acres will get, it's proposed to be rezoned to residential, which is actually in the Shelton urban growth area. It's the low intensity mixed use, but allows for residential development, in which the future proposed use is residential development, which matches the neighborhood of Berry Ridge Road. And then on that east side, the 0.96 acres, rezone that from the low intensity mixed use to commercial, and to match the commercial zoning that's adjacent to it. And I'll stop there. It's pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions for me, happy to answer them. This is just off of the Shelton Matlock Road. Just as you pass, if you were coming from downtown Shelton, you'd be passing the on-ramp to head either north or south on 101. And then the property is there on the north side of Shelton Matlock.
I have one question. You know, where the county zones one parcel, but with 2 zones. Years ago, I know when I served up in Allen on the planning up there, the rule was trying always to keep it to a parcel, not split a parcel.
Yes.
And so,
Well, so when we first did zoning in the 90s,
right,
there was no GIS map. They were working off old Metzger maps,
Right.
and it was very difficult to, apply it. And then boundary lines change over time after zoning occurs. And when you do a boundary line adjustment or any kind of short platting or what have you, the zoning doesn't change. So that is
Right.
sometimes an afterthought. And then sometimes mistakes have been made. So Marissa and I have both found, the intent was to be zone this, but once we got the GIS map in the zoning layers, that we have found errors, although less so in the last few years.
yeah. So I'm just curious, when does the threshold go for mapping error to rezone?
This we did indicate it is not a mapping error. It is a rezone.
The reason I'm having a little issue with it is, when you look at the parcel and the topography and everything about it, and there was one, adjacent to what was there, it just seemed like it should have been one or the other to begin with.
I
But I
don't know that I disagree with that, but there are hundreds of parcels then that if we use today's technology,
which I know.
it would be different. And so then almost all of them, I mean,
Yeah.
we could find hundreds of parcels that would be in error.
Yeah.
Which
she doesn't want any more work.
She doesn't want.
It
yeah, I
just
got
isn't feasible. It isn't realistic, feasible, or otherwise, and so because this was not a mapping error in the county's records of what we intended to
Sure.
zone it and how it ended up being zoned, that's what we call errors. When the county intended to zone it one way and it's on books, we have, I
Yeah.
think, 3 different,
Oh, yeah.
we check 3 different spots and corroborate. If that's clearly an error, then
Okay.
we'll remap it without
Good.
going through the.
Thank you.
Just remember, it's a revision away from perfection.
I'm just curious.
And I also don't know what the what the boundary, if boundary lines have changed.
Sure.
In this instance.
They did.
Okay, so,
That's why it's.
okay,
boundary
so
lines have
this,
changed.
yeah, so in this case, there was some boundary line.
Okay.
Or some subdivision or what have you.
Right,
that
sure,
caused
I
the,
understand that part.
okay,
Thanks.
yep.
Okay, any other comments from the commissioners?
Well, let's see, what did I miss? This is Brad Carlberg, and I did not have the passcode. So
Well, we are on item number 3, public hearing regarding a rezone.
yeah, so now, introductions is Mr. Spear of, I've got the whole meeting expanded. Full house, standing room only. Is Mr. Spear there for, that put the request to rezone?
The applicant is in the room, yes.
So, and, I guess I was doing my due diligence this morning to research. I put it off to the last minute, but, I was talking to one of the 8 parcel holders, Mr. Sears, and he said that he's okay with the building, but he was not made aware of any. He didn't see any publication, any sign on any. Should have been a sign on the property, but he was not made aware of it. So
We've
Yeah.
mailed out to all of the property owners within 300 feet of the boundary of the parcel and the subject parcel, and we also I personally posted the site. So we don't use huge signs, so that is a common complaint.
well, the system didn't work because he's in 281.
It sounds like the system did work, Brad. She did put the sign like she's supposed to. And it was
And
published
then we did mail it
to the
out
ma-
as well.
to the homeowners or property owners.
Well, it didn't work in that one case. So and one of the 8, one of the 7 parcels, because so whatever. But as long as you keep his comments being, as long as you keep the slope to the south, as you did say, he has no problem with it. Doesn't particularly want a kennel or a loud bar in that CI property to the east.
Do they have covenants?
Does he have what?
Do they have covenants? Is it an HOA?
I certainly don't think so, but I didn't ask him that question. Mr. Spear would know. He can answer that question.
I mean, that would be one way of preventing things like that from happening, is if it's written into the covenants that everyone has bought into when they purchase the property. So it doesn't
Well-
sound like there's any covenants. It doesn't sound like they have an HOA.
Well, did Spears, there's a 7 third of an acre lots there to the west of Spears, the one that he owns, in the middle of the U of the prop. So, I mean, if he says there's no covenants, then
I mean,
just don't put a kennel there. You won't piss him off.
I'd be glad to speak when it's appropriate, but I don't think that, you know, I'm supposed to speak without being called on or having my time, so.
Well, speak, you have the floor.
Uh,
Why don't you come
well,
up?
yeah,
Oh.
so is everyone done with staff questions?
Yeah,
And then I would turn it over to the applicant if they wish to address the.
It sounds like the commissioners would like to hear from a property owner.
All right.
I want you to come up forward so Brad can hear you.
All right.
And make sure you identify yourself.
You probably sit next to Mr. Wilkerson.
Oh, she's saying that's fine. You're fine.
All right, I'm Andrew Spear.
Cause I can't see you now. You're off the camera.
Mr. Spear, why don't you just take a seat here? So
Hey, Brad,
can see
let
you
the
if
guy
you don't
talk.
mind.
Would
Either
you like
way.
me over here as the chairman?
Wherever you feel comfortable, Mr.
Yeah,
Spears.
we're not a problem. That better, Brad?
Yeah,
Okay.
So, you know, I agree that this rezone is not because of an error. This cleans up the previous boundary line. And so, I would say, you know, commend the new planner is the one that picked up on this. And as we were going through this, we realized that this back piece here was zoned industrial commercial.
Right.
And so I don't think that any of those 8 people that have a house there would want to have something industrial at the end of their road. And so there is a covenants that go with those, you know, 8 lots. And so this rezone kind of clears up a previous error, if you want to call that. And so that makes that mixed use so that there would be residential lots at the end.
Mhm.
And then at the other end, it fits better with down there. And so there is a boundary line adjustment that's in the works. And so when that's approved, then the zoning will actually follow the property lines. And so that, you know, it kind of cleans up some previous things that weren't caught. And so I think that it fits with the neighborhood. There is covenants there. There was also another property owner that was called today that was a little unsure what was going on. And so that seemed a little bit odd. If people have more questions, then we can go into it. Otherwise, I'll leave it at that. So as Kel said, the mailings did go out. The property is, if you drive to the end of the road, it's posted there. And so, you know, you're not gonna, Mr. Sears's lot, you're not gonna see it driving in and out of his driveway, but things went out. So anyhow, I think it cleans up some previous things. It's gonna fit the neighborhood good. It's going to, you know, create, you know, another residential building lot, and we need building lots. We need affordable housing. And so any other questions that I should address or answer or input?
Not yet, at least.
Nothing down here.
Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Mhm.
So I appreciate, you know, Kel getting involved because she had her staff tied up doing other things. And so she kind of moved it through the process in a timely fashion instead of it just sitting on somebody's desk. So we appreciate that. And
We believe in customer service.
One question that I was gonna save it for the county, but you probably know. In the application, it mentioned that there's, your plan to subdivide in there is to create 2 lots, correct?
we're not subdividing. We could subdivide
Okay.
because it's been long enough, but we're doing a boundary line adjustment. So we have, you know, we're just moving the parcel numbers around. So there's just a boundary line adjustment is all that's happening.
Okay, so when I look at this map here, it looks like what was one parcel it's becoming 2, or is that not the case?
It will become 2, correct, but then we'll have a larger parcel at the other end
Here, over here.
that then has all the same zoning.
Yeah, okay.
So-
No, I'm, the reason where I'm leading us to this is, and I don't have any issues with it. What I'm trying to do is clarify one for myself and others. that in the list that was showing that that there was that there was gonna be potentially two home sites, which is no problem there. The question is that all gonna be served by that one group, going to the water side of the equation, is that all gonna be, again, looking at the SEPA, there's this reference to groundwater and it says, okay, it's group A or group B. And normally those are set up at like 9 is usually the state's limit. I happen to have one that's gotten to 14, but there's a lot of work that goes into making it 14. And I noticed there was 8 existing lots there to begin with. And so seeing this as 2, I'm saying, did your engineer get all that, work through, or?
You'd have to upgrade that system to a class A.
Yeah,
And so it's more economical to drill a well. So there's parcels that have never had a well drilled on them.
oh, okay,
That are
so you're thinking
So-
that it would
so
be
we-
a wholly new well,
And
okay,
then we also have city water that serves the one lot and
okay,
the city. Well, they'd like to expand it, but they don't have capacity,
Sure.
they tell you they have capacity, it's kind of one person tells you one thing and another tells you another, and so.
I understand,
But so I think, there's a little configuring to do, but we have plenty of water based on
Okay.
exempt. And then, there is still one connection left on that water system.
right, and I mean, I'm not trying to find fault, I'm just saying that the county's working with you through this, and I want to make sure I understand.
Right.
And then the last area, again, I have an issue with this, but I see these things that say one thing and then it's kind of different. There's a reference to any slide areas or unstable, I guess they call it unstable ground within, and there is actually by the county's records, some on the north side within about 50, 60 feet of the parcel boundary here. Again, I don't see it to be a problem because I understand the soils, but it's just when you come down through the SEPA thing where they said there's no, the soils are stable. And you look at another map, 50 feet away to the north, there's actually, it shows a more recent, unstable soils.
So in response to that, there was a geotech study done previously, and there's actually survey pins in that map that it doesn't show it on this map, but
Right.
there's a survey pins in, so all of those 8 lots, including the 9th lot,
Right?
have pins staken back where they have to stay from the slope, and
Oh, okay,
there's a
super,
setback where you can put septic systems in them, but you can't build in them.
right,
And so that was previously addressed, and it does just cut off the corner of that,
yeah,
one lot.
and
There's-
no problem, but I appreciate knowing that, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay.
So if I could just add one thing, and I'm kind of Kel in regards, so we're doing the swap, but I just had noted on there as far as straightening, so if there was a mapping error, there is this one line where it like jogged.
Right.
It could have just been the way the computer pulled it up, but I just wanted to, as
can get
part
that
of this.
portion for free.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure once we got through all this, we didn't have a jog into
Yeah.
that lot, so. Anything else I can add or any other questions?
Not for me.
No.
I'm good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything from Brad?
I'm sure he would have chipped in.
Okay,
All right, so
You're welcome.
thanks.
Any other public comment?
well, looks like we are pretty well
That-
through discussing this subject, so who gets to do the motion?
So none of the members of the public here have any comment towards this? Okay,
They
Just
haven't
wanna make-
spoken up.
I know they hadn't spoken, but.
Just want to check. Yeah.
Oh, I think
Better
it's
safe than sorry.
unusual to see bodies and say,
No.
I figured if someone had a burning thing to say, they'd jump up and down and say something about it.
No, you have to call for public comment.
Okay, well, in that case, I will call for public comment.
Yeah, I don't have any public comment. Thank you for asking.
Hearing none. I guess my view on is people are here because they're interested and if they have something to say or want to say something, just ask.
I think that is typically the case, but sometimes someone might be on Zoom or in the room that's never done this before and not, and are expecting to be, the process, so. We typically do, the staff, then applicant, and then public comment. Just in case, but I mean, you're right, because you read the room, they're all here for the comp plan.
Okay, so has everyone had their say?
Anybody going back and looking through the records, hearing it on the record is important. So
Thank you.
All right, who gets to do the motion?
We making a motion to approve? Is that what we're doing?
Typically, we say
Unless you
we
disagree.
move to recommend approval by the county commissioners.
Okay, I'll make the motion then to approve the recommendation.
Okay, Brad, are you gonna second? Okay, Brad is seconded. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. And we're done with that item. Now on to the work session. Comprehensive plans.
Aaron with SCJ Alliance tonight, he's taking over for Christina. Christina can make it tonight. He is working with the city of Shelton on their comprehensive plan.
Okay.
You've got the floor.
Good evening. Oh, thank you. Good evening. And I'm sorry Christina couldn't make it and that you're stuck with me tonight. Quick disclosure, some of the things I'll be going over, it was not on the interview team, so it's secondhand information, and I'm going to look to you to provide feedback and identify anything we may have missed through the stakeholder interviews. And then we have some discussion questions for you, and I can, if I'm able to share my screen, I can kind of keep live notes as we go through those. I guess first, I'm Aaron Qualls. I'm a senior project manager with SCJ Alliance. Work on long range and current planning with SCJ, have for about 3 years. And I'm also working with the city of Shelton on their comprehensive plan update. And so I don't come with complete unfamiliarity to the issues facing Mason County. And I believe that update on Shelton's process will follow this, and I have some slides to show if we have time for that, and if you'd like to hear where the city has been going so far. With that, I'm happy to jump in unless there are any burning questions right off the bat.
You've got the floor, Aaron.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Let me pull up my so some of the key themes and takeaways. It sounds like most of you were able to read through the discussion guide that was prepared. So I will just kind of start there on some of the with the key themes that we heard or my colleagues heard when interviewing primarily service providers in the county and other jurisdictions. So land use and growth management, and in context of state requirements and countywide planning policies, and to kind of get ahead of one question that I heard at the beginning of the meeting, a lot has changed, especially around critical areas and housing, as I know you're all well aware, and there's a lot to consider this year following recent legislation, new elements, new data sets that we've started compiling, and that we would look to you to vet and help us refine. So land use and growth management, transportation, infrastructure development, particularly around US 101 from Shelton to Olympia. Environmental stewardship and habitat management. This is something that came up already this evening. Critical areas. There are new requirements by the state about critical areas. What it constitutes a critical area. Aquifer recharge areas are considered a critical area, and as well as fish and wildlife habitat. And there's also a new requirement about best management practices, and Fish and Wildlife has come out with some recommended guidelines that are fairly robust. So that would all have to be baked in. You don't have to use their best available science. You can create your own as long as it's best available science. For evaluating the impacts and protecting the functionality of critical areas, which it came up again and again through the stakeholder interviews we've done so far. South Mason faces a lot of issues with facilities and strategic planning and the limitation of space. And a multi-use or safety facility came up in some of our discussions for law enforcement, dispatch, and public works. And lack of training facility and staffing issues for EMS, I'm presuming here. And then general community growth and change. We heard from one tribe so far. I had some conversations with them, and there was a expressed desire for better coordination with the county to plan for services with the tribe. And some concerns about growth in North County, altering the appearance, commercial base, and fire services. Concerns about loss of revenue and economic activity. Certainly, service impacts and revenue came up for emergency response. That kind of leads into the climate resiliency planning that we'll talk a little bit about, just the overview scope of that and what may go into it, and some discussion question prompts for you to help us identify some of the assets and challenges that may lie ahead. Certainly opium use has been an ongoing concern in terms of public health and safety, but there has been seen some success in combating that with a focus on upstream work and mental health initiatives. Coordination with the tribe and operations within the county face challenges is still, and I think this kind of ties into the EMS questions about, considering cumulative impacts and revenue constraints. And of course, land use kind of drives all those impacts to transportation, delivery services such as EMS and various others. And that's really the intent of a comprehensive plan and subsequent zonings, to ensure that services can be, or levels of service can be maintained with new growth. And kind of going a little bit into one of the elements, which is a capital facilities plan. There's also new legislation that really shores up the requirement to make sure your land use scenario is going to be serviceable. And a reevaluation is triggered through policy of land use if you identify a shortfall in your capital facilities plan, your 6-year plan, actually up to 20 years. But without as much detail as you need for 6 years, which really should be updated annually. Workforce and funding challenges, recruitment and retention. For service levels, our service providers rather was identified. But I think this kind of also plays into economic development and recruitment efforts. I can say that has come up certainly for the city of Shelton, and other constraints for economic development, which I can go into more detail if you wish. Certainly education came up with county discussions as well as within the city. More offerings for higher education, which is directly, of course, related to economic development, along with housing and infrastructure. Broadband has come up, I know, within the city, and I know there is a sort of consortium of trying to increase the availability of broadband, a pretty key economic infrastructure element today. And then, of course, back to housing, which is a huge push by the legislature for us to plan for and accommodate. What we've heard, and I think what the data has indicated as well, is that housing prices or wages have not kept pace with the cost of housing. Those are some of the key kind of high level issues. I can go into more detail with regards to the tribe, school districts, and then of course with the city of Shelton and challenges and opportunities identified with them. Oh, and then of course, this is something where the city of Shelton will certainly be working directly with you, and that is consideration of the UGA annexation and where growth is forecasted, where certain parts of the UGA for Shelton may make less sense than other areas based on existing development patterns, and so that's probably a conversation for later, but I guess a little seed plant there for work on that. And with that, I guess that's kind of a very top level overview, but I would love to hear, we can jump into discussion questions, or I'd love to hear any burning questions or things you think that are missed that deserve a little bit more attention. As just kind of a general overview of some of the key themes we've been hearing, again, primarily from neighboring jurisdictions and service providers.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the North
Jeff's
County?
got the floor.
Oh, okay.
No problem. Under the key themes, what is safe system approach referencing, or do you know?
Safe systems approach.
Number one there, last line on the key themes, safe systems approach. What is that?
That is a approach to transportation, I believe. Let's see, that's under land use and growth of transportation infrastructure. Yes? No.
I don't know. I'm asking, and I understand.
Oh, yeah.
You dropped this.
Yeah, safe system approach. There is a kind of handy graphic. We don't have any of my transportation planners on the line with me. Oh, by the way, we're also working on for the city of Shelton, transportation master plan. I can't remember off the top of my head all the elements that go into that. Let me
and I don't have a problem.
And I can certainly come back to you with answers. And
Yeah,
again,
no, that'd be fine.
I wasn't the author of the document, but
Right.
So safer people, safer vehicles, safer speed, safer roads, and post-crash care. And that comes from the U.S. Department of Transportation. And that's what I understand the safe system approach to be.
Okay. Item 4 under key themes. Second line, when it's referenced completely out of room, are we talking land use? Are we talking facilities, or? Because it talks about planning and facilities, but then are we just totally talking about only facilities and not land use, or? And again, I realize you're dropped in the middle of this, and
Yeah, thank you.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah, appreciate your patience with me. And again, I'm happy to come back with written answers to these questions, and I will be taking notes.
And that'd be fine. That'd be fine. I don't need them answered tonight. That if you have it, great. If not, we'll get it.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Okay. I would guess, but I'm not going to guess for you. I want to make sure I understand it as well. So let me put a comment here. And
how many more
I'll follow up.
We haven't gotten the details, so I want to the high level stuff only. That's it for the high level stuff. for me.
Is there anything else? Okay. Hey, Brad, your turn.
Yeah, on number 5, right below infrastructure challenges. When you briefly said growth in North County, and they had concerns about loss of revenue and activity. What was causing their loss of revenue? And is that North County up to the county line with Jefferson? I mean,
I would
that-
presume so.
um, and I guess then the next question about the education, you're gonna work with what's it called, Olympic College, and bring in, I guess that's the only college in the area, so post-secondary that is. So
Yes, they would definitely be a key stakeholder, I think, both for the city and the county.
yeah. And I just happened to be looking today to find the affordable internet, and I happened to be watching a video by the Washington State Broadband Office. Are you guys working with that organization and for the county, so it can make things available, make the affordable Ethernet available to all?
Yes, broadband is certainly a really important driver of necessary infrastructure, I'll say, for economic
Yeah.
development. And certainly there's a lot of remote workers who have found their way to Mason County, as they have in many other amenity-rich rural areas in the West, and really everywhere. So, and I know that Department of Commerce does offer grant support for that types of infrastructure, and certainly opportunity funding sources and opportunity and grant, including grant opportunities, are something that we typically would bake into a comprehensive plan, so that you have a roadmap forward, along with an implementation matrix or an implementation section of a comp plan, and we'll work through that in the later phases to kind of chart a course of actions. One of which may be to, pursue, this grant, or identify, what areas should maybe be prioritized for broadband investment. Also, there can be policies put in place. And, we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but for example, a dig once policy where if, you're digging up a road for whatever reason, you can certainly, it's not a much more cost to put in some conduit at the same time versus later digging it up again and then paving over it, just to, facilitate at least the conduit, which fiber can go into later, be fed into. That's just one example of a policy that could be put in place. But those are further details that will be worked out, and certainly with other stakeholders, both purveyors of broadband and community decision makers.
Anything else, Brad?
Question, are we going into more detail, or are we summarizing this whole document? Well, I could ask Aaron. Aaron, from what you stated, are we going to go into more detail on this document, or?
Well, the next step would be the kind of some of the discussion questions that we've provided at the end of both the key themes. And then after that, we want to talk a little bit about climate resiliency planning, and then ask you for some areas of concern and what assets are maybe of greatest importance for dealing with climate related issues in the future in terms of resiliency, meaning, to withstand any changes, whether it's, increased risk of wildfire or flooding as examples. But if there are no other questions or anything you want me to try to answer or flag for follow-up later, with regards to the key themes we provided in the packet, I'm happy to jump into questions. Mr. Chair?
And so I think there needs to be a little bit more focused, for whatever reason, in the health area of the community. In that, to address that matter,
Did we
because
lose them?
Yeah, I was just checking that. Looks like he dropped off real quick. So let's give him a minute.
Lots of problems.
Mercury is in retrograde.
Oh, you should dial back in and give him a minute.
yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, you folks froze up.
Well, but he's back there, yeah.
Here he comes.
Hey.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry,
You're back.
You're back.
okay, all right. Yeah, you all froze on me, so I left and rejoined. It looks like that solved it. I think the last thing that I heard was myself saying, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all I wanted to see was working in the comprehensive plan that we're working on. I think we have to address something more in the health area, dealing with the fact that we have a higher percentage of the 21 to 64-year-olds being disabled. And this is using the census definition, meaning, deaf, blindness, immobile, and cognitive. To whatever, however they measure that. They have four criterias. So I just see that as something, not, for an answer, but to get into this whole process of working the comprehensive plan. The second thing is, I mentioned it here a meeting or two back, is that in the housing, we have an interesting situation in this county, and I'm part of that group. Statistically, in the group that's 65 or older, most of us in this county in 20 years, less than 10% of us statistically are going to be here, which means you have home turnover, which means you have, it's like this county, one of the records was that built 240 structures a year in the permitting side. That was one of the census numbers. Well, you can have average 270 pop free every year for the next 20 years. I mean, it may be higher or lower depending, skewing as age group, but what I'm getting at is, in looking at the housing component, we have to understand that we have a population that is older, and statistically, that's another, it sounds bad, I realize, but I'm part of that group. There'll be more housing in this area than normal statistically from people moving on.
So, when people pass on, is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And it's actually a question that's been emerging in a much wider, throughout the country. Baby boomers are the largest generation, and what happens when they do pass on, and how does that affect your what's called a population period? What does that look like from a population pyramid perspective?
Right.
That is incorporated in your community profile, right? You can kind of see how population may shift. So that's a great consideration.
And that's it. I just, as far as what you're involved, the county's involved in us creating that plan, that was just my 2 points. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and capture these here if you can see my screen, I'm assuming you can. So please let me know
can.
if I'm capturing what I'm hearing accurately, if you would.
Yeah, like your item A, 1A, the capacity to address the health concerns that are higher as a percentage in this county than any other in the state of Washington.
Was that specific to those who are considered disabled or just generally?
This was all, census was, had it flagged as disabled.
Okay. For a high population of disabled,
A high percentage, yeah.
high percentage.
Thank you.
So Aaron, changing the question just a little, or questioning a little bit. And my apologies, I have not read the entire document. I've been very busy weekend. And
That's okay.
when I look at this, I guess a couple things stand out, but I see a lot of, basically challenges is some of these, I mean, like number 3, no net loss for critical area functions. Okay, don't disagree with that. But when I compare that with affordable housing and a potential growth of, 1.7% to 46% of population, how do some of these things really seem to be sort of in conflict? Where do you see the largest conflicts? And as you move forward, where are you going to place weight or value, or what direction have you been given to place weight or value?
Well, that's a great question, and you're really, I think, spot on with regards to those, potential conflicts with regards to, recent legislation and the push for additional housing, along with also the push to protect the functionality of critical areas, which can conflict sometimes. At this point, it's not for me to presume at this stage what your direction should be. It's something we'll work through. I can tell you how that can potentially play out in implementation through code updates a little bit, because I'm kind of wrapped up in it with another jurisdiction who's looking to update their critical areas ordinance. And it's kind of one of the biggest potential new challenges is the best available science behind fish and wildlife, habitat, riparian areas. And the best available science really would limit a lot of development close and within those areas in order to sustain tree stands and the health of an overall riparian area in the streams, but particularly for fish bearing. And so that could conflict with development for additional housing. But in the implementation, there certainly are things like reasonable exception clauses and buffer averaging and, ways to allow, appropriate amount of development depending on the zone and everything else. And also in consideration of protecting the functionality of those critical areas. So sometimes that requires a mitigation plan, for example. And, in order to, and you can come up with, procedural processes that make sense, that aren't too laborious, but, ensure that mitigation efforts are appropriate and are adhered to, just as examples. So I don't have the answers right now, but it's definitely things to consider.
Well, I think it's good, and I would add into those mitigation efforts effectiveness is that, we can have a good plan, but, say 2-3 years down the road, is that mitigation actually achieving the desired effects? And if not, then what do we need to do? What updates do we need to have real time as we go through that? Because I think you hit a very key point in a quick scan here, is there's any number, number 1, and I'm just going to jump down into the airports too. The airport has a very specific section talking about the Oregon Vesper Sparrow and the Shelton's Pocket Gopher. And there's a lot of environmental considerations in here that are gonna, we're sort of, we gotta find that right balance, and I don't know where that is, and that's where I was really looking at it, as we talk about, mitigation or, some of these acts like, by an airfield and dealing with, birds. You got the whole bird aircraft strike hazard, the whole BASH scenario, and how do you deal with that? And most importantly, how do you protect our wildlife appropriately? And it's a real challenge when you have particularly any wildlife, but in particular protected wildlife around one runway, because the primary way you can prevent it is not fly aircraft, but that's sort of problematic for an airfield. So.
Yes. No, you're right. And again, don't have necessarily answers for any specific site or project, right? And that's, but having policy and processes in place to be able to deal with site specific issues, in ways that make sense for that particular project and site, is appropriate to have it at the, front end of policy, and then appropriate code, code to fall back on, so that you can apply flexibility, while also protecting, species at risk and habitat.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of ties in a little bit with what Will was asking here. I mean, not specifically, but is there any consideration when you're planning to allow for something like an environmental impact fee that would then be applied or passed on to the developers, that would allow them to make their developments, but then if funds would be set aside to purchase, habitat in other areas that would be more suited for those areas, and then protect them for future development?
Yeah, like a mitigation bank,
Right.
for wetlands, for
But have
example.
funding for, have a funding source, that would come from the developers.
Yes. Yeah, if there is a, eligible mitigation bank within the county, and I assume there is, but that's one way in which, okay, maybe you can fill this wetland, but you have to pay money, mitigation credits, in order to restore maybe an area that's more important to protect, due to the habitat within the area. So that is one way to, mitigate impact and still, facilitate development in an area that is, already developed, like an urban growth area, for example. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that done. I mean, I don't want to promote anything that was done in California necessarily, but that's what they did down there. And as a developer, we didn't like it. But it was a necessary evil.
Well, let me play a follow on
Yeah.
you now, Mike, is Aaron, within your scope of work for this, can you or do you provide, basically different scenarios for decisions? Specifically, I like what Mike's saying. It provides basically a mitigation fund, but at the same side, it then increases the cost of development. And at the same time, we're trying to address affordable housing. Again, I'm
Right.
assuming this development is housing. So there's, yes, we support here, but we impact this other thing. Is there an analysis that you do in this process to provide, I guess, guidance to help people along those decisions, as opposed to their gut feel? I always like objective evidence and not my subjective evidence going into the decision process.
Yeah, well, certainly the state requires that we have objective evidence, best available science, and that your critical areas ordinance, for example, addresses certain procedures to accommodate either mitigation or either avoidance or mitigation. And so there are certainly requirements by the state, and yes, we can advise on, we have to meet the requirements of the state, but we can certainly advise, I think, on potential policy changes that make procedures a little bit easier. At least that's been my focus for other jurisdictions outside of this county, but in other areas, I've been looking, and we can provide some potential policy recommendations, or even, maybe some code ideas down the road for ways to maybe a public hearing isn't triggered in all cases, right? Maybe rather than the expense of a public hearing on the developer and the county or city, maybe it's just ensuring that a applicant's qualified professional, their report is up to snuff, right? A second opinion. That might be a better route, for example, and this is just one example, than just requiring a public hearing, which can have less predictability, adds time, which adds costs. And then there's, of course, the cost of going through the public hearing process as well. And timing, as you know, having been a developer, that could mean especially for a public hearing, all the noticing that goes into that could be a construction season. So that's, again, just one idea, but yes, we can certainly look at that as it's appropriate for Mason County, and as and while meeting the letter and intent of state requirements.
Can you, you used the term best available science 2 or 3 times this evening. Can you describe that? And let me just give you my background. So I think of best available science in sort of 3 levels, and I want your definition, not mine. One is common practice, things we do every day. Best available could also be state of the art, newly into the commercial world, or literally it could be the newest, first of a kind, never have been employed before. And each of those come with very differing price tags and potential risks. Will they really work, particularly when you get to the newest, never used before? So when you say best available, how do you define it?
Well,
Sorry.
best available, no, I'm trying to find a state definition of that, because it's state code that says we need best available science. So I'm hesitant to give my own definition.
And that's a good answer. If there is a state definition, then I would love to hear it, because when I hear best available science, I hear price tag that comes with it.
Well,
and that could be in both time and money.
And really what the state requires is that your ordinance has to be based on best available science. Not that every developer needs to hire a scientist in order to, build something in proximity in a wetland buffer, for example. The ordinance has to be on best available science, and yes, a qualified professional has to, delineate the wetland and provide a mitigation plan if needed. That person, could be a wetlands biologist, for example, and that's typical to be on a developer's application team if they are dealing with a critical area on the site that they want to develop. And so,
I'd like to address this if I may.
Go ahead.
So, you pointed out the planner's dilemma. So we have state requirements that often directly conflict with each other. Affordable housing, critical area protection, affordable housing, energy credits on the building side, and on and on and on. Fish and Wildlife, the Department of Fish and Wildlife are the ones who came up with this riparian. And it's been a couple of years since I've commented on their best available science on riparian habitat protection. And it may be best available science. It is not in reality with humans living on the earth and needing to, and I am a preservationist and a conservationist, environmentalist, and I'm also a realist. And on behalf of Mason County, we sent the Department of Fish and Wildlife our comments, because if we were to apply their best available science on implementing buffers, we don't have the people to do it. We'd have to go out on site on every single piece of property and do measurements based on site potential tree height, which changes within the county. We're given a site potential tree height of, I don't know, off the top of my head, I think it's around 205 feet or something, but it also could change within the county. And you have to go out on each side of the stream, for example, and each foot of the stream, it's all different. And so you have to figure out what the buffer is, and it would be impossible to implement, impossible. And so I crafted a letter saying that I worked with state ecology, multiple county officials, and it didn't matter. Fish and Wildlife didn't want to care about that. So whoever was in charge of Fish and Wildlife, or whoever ran that program, they didn't care. And this is our best available science. And so when Marissa and I, working with Fish and Wildlife and our other state agency, or updating our comprehensive plan and working with our other state agency and partners, including our tribal partners in the county, we're going to be looking at, that may be your best available science, but we have other available science to us that we are going to try. Otherwise, we can put that in the books and it literally will not be, it is technically not, you cannot follow their science. It is, it's for a world without humans.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess that's sort of where my question was driving a little, and thank you, Kel, for answering.
Really, it's like if we continue just the basic concept of growth management and we consolidate growth into the urban growth areas where there's urban services, sewer, water, power, roads, et cetera, which we are doing, Shelton, Allen, Belfair. And then our rural areas, I think we set those standards 20 years ago. We tweaked them, but they're pretty much, it is what it is. And like Aaron had mentioned, there's reasonable use exceptions. We do not have a mitigation bank right now, with the exception of occasionally people who have to do mitigation and they're not able to do it on site because there's not room or what have you. The Mason Conservation District has taken some of those folks. So in a way, they operate similar to a mitigation bank, and this might be an opportunity for us to actually create one more formally. So I just wanted to give that background because
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, it's,
Near and dear to you too.
yeah.
The real world.
Well, and that's my concern as we move forward is, so here we have a definition, here we have someone who's looked at it, who has the right background, has the right experience, and looked at the practicality. And where we are being legislated, it appears we have some more work to do. And where we are, we have a gap that needs to be addressed. And whether that's addressed through, maybe there's funding the state can provide, but if the state is looking at the county to provide it, we have some challenges to figure out how we're going to do that. So.
Yes,
Good.
and
Gotcha.
if I may, I think that the challenges are being acknowledged at the state level, not just the local level. My understanding, having been, started having to deal with this somewhere else, and the county's not bound necessarily to use the best available science put out by Fish and Wildlife, as I understand. I know of one county that hired a consultant to determine their own best available science, and they crafted their ordinance based on that for critical areas. But that also comes with expense that I do not think the state paid for. So.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Kelvin.
All right. And are we done with the commissioners and staff and everybody? Okay, let's go to the public comments. Go ahead, Ken.
You're on mute, Ken.
Am
Thank
I, you got me?
Yeah, we got you.
You're on
Yeah.
the floor.
Thank you for letting me comment. I just wanted to briefly touch on what Miss Rowan just said. About focusing the growth in the urban growth areas. That's why we made them. But I want to plant a seed like I'm a farmer. I want to plant a seed like Mr. Qualls just did there earlier in regards to the Shelton urban growth area. I want to plant a seed in the Belfair urban growth area that I hope you folks take a close look at the what was zoned back 20 years ago. They didn't consider where the streams and the critical areas were. And there's better areas to cite R10 zoning than what they're currently zoned R10. There's several areas, and then also in the Belfair urban growth area, all of the critical areas are not mapped correctly. And the GIS, Mason County GIS is aware of that. I've walked all of those critical areas and mapped them myself, sat down with them, but the maps have not changed. So, yeah, I just want to plant that seed and hope it flourishes. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've got half a dozen folks here. Any wish to ask questions?
Ready for the discussion questions.
Well, actually,
There is on the best available science in addition or whoever's taking notes, that in addition to the funding support, it's how do all these things conflict with each other? I don't know how to say that, but it's a balancing act between all the priorities.
Did I capture it okay in this bullet point?
No, I think it
Ways
really
to-
goes with the best available science also, Aaron.
Okay.
Because it's not just funding, it's we can implement. I suspect some of the best available science, all good stuff, will also limit other actions. And we just need to, what are those balances between humans and nature? And I don't have I can't answer that. I'm not going to, it's not my place, but I think we need to consider that and appropriately protect our resources.
hey, Julianne? I butchered your name, didn't I?
No, you got it. That's great. I'm Julianne. Hi, everybody. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the thoughtfulness and consideration that everyone's putting into this. And so just a couple of comments that I had. There was a question about what North County meant, and it might be worth double checking that because North County, meaning the Jefferson line, is really different than what people generally call North Mason, which is the Belfair area and surrounding areas. So that might be worth double checking. I think it's important to hear back from all the tribes. I'm really glad that Squaxin has shared what they wanted to share, but I imagine that Skokomish would want to, and other tribes who have UNAs in this area. I think the point that was made about the age of people here is pretty significant. And I think it would be really lovely to figure out what would youth stakeholders have to say about this. I'm also curious about, these kinds of questions where it seems like things can be in conflict. I'm of the opinion that there's at least one elegant solution to every problem. You just have to get enough different kinds of life experiences and skills and knowledge at the table. And so I'm really interested in how could we expand the stakeholder information gathering process so that more people could have an opportunity to weigh in on things that really affect our lives for the next number of years and affect our community that we all really care about, but it can be hard for regular citizens to figure out how to engage. Related to that, I'm interested in environmental justice aspects of planning. And it's really good to have service providers give perspective, but I think it's also good for people with direct lived experience themselves from the vulnerable communities themselves to get to talk as well. And again, I thank you all for your time and the amount of thought and effort that's going into this, because these are really big, hard questions that impact all of us and our future. And I'm excited to see what we can create together.
Okay. Well, thank you, Julianne.
I think, Aaron, if you would,
Oh, sorry, there's something in the notes that wasn't there that I said.
Go ahead. What did I miss?
Environmental justice.
Right here.
Oh, I see.
As a
I was
key- a-
considering
a
it
key
as
theme.
additional information, but that works too.
Okay.
And then citizens assemblies are a way to expand stakeholder input, not just from tribes and youth, but those are just examples. Citizens assemblies or co-governance models are some different ways of talking about it.
Co-governance.
Just ways that people who are regular people get to have
Yeah.
happens in our lives.
Yes, and we have a public participation plan drafted that certainly involves more than just reaching out to service providers and jurisdictions. And that really, you're absolutely right. The critical part of a comprehensive plan update, because if you don't have, political support to implement it, it's just sits on the shelf, frankly. So, thank you.
Hey, Brad, did you say something?
yeah, what I was thinking was, Aaron, as you were writing the best available science verbiage there, I remember back earlier when we talked about, can we see we need to get the state definition of best available science. Because that was a really good, I can't remember who made that thought, who brought up that thought, but get what the state says. And again, and put that thought inside that bullet.
You're looking for a definition from the state on that term?
On best available science. Remember earlier, half an hour ago, when that came up?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, I could not find an actual definition of best available science, but in the revised Code of Washington, there's some guidance from the Department of Ecology, what that means, and certainly they reference volumes 1 and 2 of Synthesis of Science and guidance on protecting and managing wetlands. Riparian areas, interestingly enough, isn't really in their bucket of, it's not in their purview. It's more in the Department of Commerce. And some of the riparian areas are in the best available science that Fish and Wildlife has come up with is pretty fresh. And it certainly is causing at least perceived conflict between other priorities by the state and local governments, which is to, facilitate housing. So I'm sorry, I don't have a definition of it.
Yeah.
It is in, under the Growth Management Act, under the WAC, so WAC 365-195. So there's not a specific definition, but there is criteria for determining, criteria for obtaining, and it goes on and on. But yeah, that's the whole section for jurisdictions under the Growth Management Act on guidance for best available science use.
Thank you.
And in item 10 of the discussion guide, Port of Shelton, it does mention airports. We don't have any mention the huge project, highest priority for Shelton. 23 years project. And then in number 10, number 3, John's Prairie, it talks about potential hangar space and potential expansion of airports, plural. Now, I'm only aware of Sanderson and is Bremerton National in Kitsap County. How many airports do we have in Mason County? And is the Johns Prairie, well,
the Port of Shelton, or Port of something rather, owns property there.
Yeah, Shelton.
It is Shelton, okay. Anyway, they own property there, so. But I'm not quite sure about putting hangars there.
No, I wouldn't think so.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Johns Prairie Industrial Park. I thought Johns Prairie was much further east,
Mm-hmm.
miles east of Sanderson Field, is it not?
It's at least 2 miles.
It's a couple
Is
miles.
that, yeah, is that demand for hangar space and potential expansion of airports? Is that sentence merely misplaced? Should that have been up in Sanderson Field Airport, item number 1, 10.10.1? But maybe we should put, seemed like it's high priority. We should add a bullet item here of things, or maybe that bullet could go in.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I, you know, and I didn't write this document, but it may be one way I might interpret this language in this discussion guide is that with the potential for additional aviation industry or aviation related businesses could come a need for other areas to be developed, not necessarily with proximity, you know, with hangars directly, not necessarily for hangars, but industrial space to support
That's what I
aviation.
believe, yeah.
Yeah, paragraph looks fine to me. It says properties like Johns Prairie.
Is it missing a comma in there or something like that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's like Johns Prairie Industrial Park, period. Demand for hangar space is, you know, what could mean to be applied anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, Sanderson Field.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd only put hangar space at an airport. So. But, I mean, I own a hangar over at the Richland Airport. And the expansion that's been going on from the Port of Benton is incredible. It makes, you know, dwarfs. So it would be good to expand the airport. I probably some 12 years ago, I asked Port of Shelton if I could get on, if there was, I was told there was a moratorium on hangar space, of building a new hangar rather. So now here we've got one huge hangar being built now, and the one just finished. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely pro aviation. Let's try and expand the airport, and we'll have to look at that master plan. But
Well, there are a number of port commissioners you can talk to.
yeah. So
Do we want to move on to the discussion questions?
Let's move on to the discussion, yeah.
Wait, wasn't Aaron gonna present this?
Oh, okay, let's ask Aaron, are you gonna do some more presentation, or are you just gonna sit back and answer questions?
Well, I would love to ask some more questions. Based on our discussion guide here. So we did provide a little bit of I don't know if you at this point familiarize yourself with the existing countywide planning policies. If not, but we were wondering if there are any themes, ideas, or areas not included that you think is critical for in consideration of countywide planning goals and policies. Certainly heard a little bit about economic development and stakeholder engagements, protection of critical areas. Certainly, those are some things that would be in there, but there could be nuances and based on changing circumstances since your last update.
When you're referencing economic development in our last update, that last update being 2016?
I believe so.
Okay. Obviously, when you look at, or at least obvious to me, when I look at the community profile and I look at the comp plan of 2016 and the economic development portion, we got a lot more population coming in, but in the last 10 years, at least if those numbers are correct, we've only picked up 400 employees. Yet the population's grown, about 5,000 or 6,000, somewhere in there. So what I'm saying is, we're picking up population and there's people working, but they're not working here, they're working elsewhere. And this, I served years ago, I served on the there's a economic advisory committee to the county back in 2018 or 19. And we finally came to the conclusion in trying to work through budgets and what have you, that Mason County, nobody likes to hear this, but it's basically a bedroom community to the other counties. And we always keep struggling to try to bring more employment here, but all the people that move here aren't really moving here for employment. They're moving here for quality of life and working somewhere else. It's a general statement, but I'm saying you look at what's going on, the numbers are still the same as they were 10 years ago as far as employees in the county. But there's 4,000 more people commuting, or they may not be commuting, they may be working home-based businesses or remote business, remote office work, but basically they get their paycheck. Yeah. That's the chart.
Yeah, your inflow, outflow, or commuting patterns.
Right, and I'm saying the outflow is about 4,000 higher than it was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But your population's greater. So, I'm not saying it's a problem. It's a problem. It's just something to understand how the structure of this county is, and take it to our advantage, make it work, make things work with it. Sometimes it's not fixing things, it's just learning how to work with what you got. You can't be everything to everybody.
So Highway 3 and Highway 101 and get more traffic.
Or something.
Mhm.
Well, and if that's the case of it being a bedroom community, yes, we don't necessarily want to worry about getting more employment, because that will destroy the quality of life or lessen the quality of life. So just accept. I personally was raised in Tacoma, so only when getting close to retirement is when I lived out here full time.
Mhm.
I'm just one example of what you're saying.
Well, anyway, this is just a point. It's not.
Yeah.
To one way or another, it's a component of how this.
But somehow that needs to be put into the plan.
Right.
Something that makes sense for future.
Would like to hear a Port of Hoodsport employee, he does not like all the newcomers moving in. I'm sure that is not a unique concern of, but a lot of full-time, long-time Mason County residents don't like all the new people coming in. So you can't keep things the same. We don't have to change. The vacation area, basically, right? A recreational area.
Anything else, Jess?
All I was expecting is Aaron was gonna drop into the climate planning section here shortly. I was curious more where that goes.
Okay, Aaron, you wanna jump into the climate stuff?
Yes. Let's see here. Back to my, okay. There are some next steps to the climate resiliency planning is a new required comp plan element. So we'll be, exploring climate impacts, auditing plans and policies, existing plans and policies in place, assessing vulnerability and risk. So really, a big part of that is identifying what the priority climate hazards are, and you do have a mitigation plan that I think was hazard mitigation plan, which I believe identifies a couple of key potential hazards. So the idea is you identify your community assets, you explore hazards and changes in the climate and identifying what kind of impacts those could have, what exposure, what risk levels do you have for different types of hazards based on known predictions about and modeling. There's a lot of resources that the state has assembled to look at that stuff, and I believe we have some additional consultants on board to help identify those and leaning heavily on your, again, hazard mitigation plan. Then it gets baked into policy, how to address these pending impacts should they occur, such as increased risk of flooding, like I mentioned, or wildfire. What could that mean for land use scenarios? What could that mean for infrastructure investment? What size should culverts be? For example, if you have to replace a culvert, should it be upsized to deal with the potential of flooding in the future? So those are kind of things that could be implemented through policy considerations and looking ahead towards impact of climate. And I see there's a hand up, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to.
Julianne?
Yeah, I put my hand up before when we were talking about change in employment numbers.
Oh, okay.
Because I noticed that the employment numbers were from 2021. And I'm just wondering how much of that being kind of early mid-pandemic actually, like how different is it now in 2024 than it was in 2021? Because that was Mason County doesn't have as many work from home employment opportunities as other areas do.
I can say that 2022 is typically has the best data from the census. I'll have to see which specific stat was coming from 2021 for employment. And I don't know for certain where the commute patterns that I have currently up on the screen, whether that's 2021 or 2022 or not. But I can answer that if you like right now, Mr. Chair, or I can follow up later.
How long would it take to do the answer? Because we're at 7:30 now. So how much more by the way, how much more do you have to go?
Well, I wanted to pose a couple of discussion questions around climate planning. If you'll suffer through it with me. What you think maybe the greatest areas of concern are when it comes to climate planning, and what community assets are the greatest importance for Mason County.
Okay, so Julianne, if you don't mind, let's have Aaron research it and get back to us. Or do you want to? Okay. So go ahead, Aaron. We've got people here that have questions too, so.
Okay. So real quick, greatest areas of concern when it comes to climate planning. That's a question broadly for PAC or any other member that you would like to, anybody in attendance who you'd like to pose this question to as well.
Recommend we open the public discussion.
Anyone have any issues with
No, I have no issue.
that? All right, public. Please sit over here so that way Brad can see you. And make sure you identify yourself for the record.
Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in tonight, particularly this early in the conversation. My name is Peggy Morrell. I live in unincorporated Mason County in Union, Washington. I have one process question for you, Aaron, and one area of concern for the county that I just want to put a peg in for this evening. So my process question, I understand that Senate bill or House Bill 1181, which is the improving the state response to climate change, which is a mandate and which will be for many counties part of their comprehensive plan update. But for Mason County, our climate response will be handled through our hazard mitigation plan. So my first process question is this process going to be different? And by process, I mean the discussion at the county level, the discussion with public engagement is because it's being handled through the hazard mitigation plan. Is that going to be separate from the comprehensive plan process for updating?
No, the quick answer is no. It's a required element of a comprehensive plan, so it is baked into the comprehensive plan update. Let me just kind of peek at the schedule here. The idea is that it, so there, I believe Mason County has a separate grant for climate mitigation, as the city of Shelton does, but they, from the Department of Commerce, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is its own, process that isn't related to the comp plan, because it is a requirement as a comp plan element. And certainly, it also has some implications for the transportation element, where a multimodal level of service is a new requirement by the state as part of that bill. And so that's where elements may, cross over into each other. And, the idea is that a plan is comprehensive, right? It considers all things, and it affects ultimately where different uses and different densities are allocated or not, based on housing targets and protection of critical areas, and in consideration of climate resiliency going forward. That's a very broad answer. I'm just kind of peeking at the schedule here if I can get something more specific, but that's generally the process, is that they would go in parallel and inform each other.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to the more detail of the public participation plan.
Oh, I can certainly share that if you like.
Is it in a document? I know that there's one from
Yes.
2023. There's one on the county website from 2023, but it didn't have real specifics. In our last conversation with SCJ, they said that one participation plan was going to be coming. So is that more detail and specifics? As you can tell, I'm interested in the climate resiliency aspect of the update.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be addressed at the moment, but just something.
I believe they
So-
have, Aaron, I could say something. I know that, we're supposed to be looking back at the participation plan for the climate element aspect. So she will be going back and reviewing the participation plan to make sure, climate element.
Okay, so that's super.
So
Thank
she
you,
hasn't gotten
Marissa.
to that point yet. Yeah.
Okay,
So that
awesome.
update isn't here yet.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The second question is it's more of an area of concern. And it was, I want to put a pin in it at the beginning of this process, because personally, I want to revisit it at the end of this process as well. I know that since the climate resiliency element is going to be addressed through the hazard mitigation plan, I also know that that plan was just updated last year and that it was a 10-month process. I heard from PUD 1 that it was a very thorough process and time-consuming process, which it needed to be. But so now I'm wondering, with an additional update, I just have kind of a question about the appetite and the ability to do more updates to that hazard mitigation plan. I also remember in volume 2 of the current hazard mitigation plan, they have those wonderful matrices where they have party responsible, where the resources are going to come from. And now we're at, yes, that's exactly my point right there.
Right.
Yes, and so now we're adding another set of requirements, a mandate from the state. And I know that there was 2 comments. Someone here talked about the balancing act among all priorities when you were talking about the comprehensive plan in general. And then someone talked about the real world scenario when we were looking at what is best available science compared to what is really possible. So I'm looking down the line and I'm looking at adding all the requirements that may come from successfully implementing HB 1181. And I'm looking at the staff available to do that level of coordination.
Right.
This is exactly why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
No, it's,
I mean, what is the real world
no,
scenario if this happens?
how are we gonna balance all of this? And let's not even, let's just, how do we put a good plan together? But then, and just assuming it's fiscally, we can unrestrain it fiscally. How do we put it all together? Then you add the fiscal elements, and you add timing and everything else, and it gets really complicated really fast. It's a great question.
And it's the planning aspect. I mean,
Yes.
just the staff capacity to plan, to imagine. The climate element is new. So we're going into territory that we're not updating what was there before,
Right.
although there is a little bit.
It's
So anyway.
also the implementation and oversight.
Exactly. And the staff and the dollars to do it. So I just want to put a pin on that. I'll be back at the end of the year.
Your concerns are not yours alone. We've actually touched that subject several times
Well,
in different areas, but
yes, it's
same
an
subject.
ongoing theme
Right.
for many areas of what the work that you do, I would
Right.
say. So I just
And-
want to be on record
Oh, yeah.
saying I asked. the
You're here to
question.
keep us honest.
All right. All right, that's it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to do,
We're with her.
Well,
very
to answer Aaron's question, you wanted to fill in the question 1 and 2, put a couple bullet items, right? I mean, I would say to add a bullet item, I mean, greatest areas of kind of tying them together. You know, if our greatest concern, I agree what's been said before, wildfire and flooding. So, and being on the canal, I don't want flooding to wipe out, to add, what's the word, toxins into the canal and kill the shellfish and then the other asset being the Olympics and the snowfall. Those I think would be our best assets. And get something on paper there to answer your questions.
That's helpful.
So Aaron, if we could add, I'll just say somewhere under discussion questions, and maybe it's number 3. Let's add one that says House Bill 1181 and just talk about how does that get interfaced with the hazard mitigation plan that HUD puts together?
It's a county document, but
Yeah.
we understand from planning that Mason County will be implementing FB 1181, not through the comp plan, but through the hazard mitigation.
But it becomes a comp plan element, so very
Correct.
similar to like shoreline master program and we call it a resource ordinance, but it's a critical areas resource. Critical areas ordinance is what most counties call it. We call it a resource ordinance. Those are required elements of of growth management, comprehensive planning, but they're separate standalone documents. And so we are implementing the new state requirements of climate into the hazard mitigation plan, but that then becomes a comprehensive planning document.
That the scope and the funding is within the comp plan to update the hazard
Yes,
plan, and that
Yeah.
becomes part of the comp plan.
Yep.
Good. So the
yeah.
scope and the funds are covered then.
Yes, and then
Getting it done, to your point on the timing is another issue, but one
it's
piece at
very
a time.
similar. Our transportation element is a document that's part of the comprehensive plan, but it gets updated. Here we're doing a full comprehensive plan update. But there's very often we'll do like, we're gonna update the transportation plan or capital facilities plan. Those two are required to be updated annually. But the other elements, parks and recreation, that meets comprehensive planning documentation, but they'll update that at different times based on state funding and things like that. So that's how that hazard mitigation plan it'll now be rolled as part of, which is great. Because in the past, that was always a standalone document that didn't get wrapped into the county's comprehensive plan, and now it will. So I think that's a very good thing. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Could I just make a comment?
Come on up,
Otherwise Brad can't see.
no problem. Make sure you identify yourself.
Karen Rice, I live,
Right here.
on Tommy.
That's the
Hot seat.
That's the hot seat.
Okay,
Yeah, then Brad can see.
everything that's been brought up, I just was putting this together is falling under the climate change. It's the warming, housing, transportation, the people with disabilities, aging people, they can't cope with it the same way other people can. Going to work in an air-conditioned office. Oh, well, it's 100 degrees in Shelton, so what? And it's always hotter in Shelton than in other places, I've noticed. So I just want to say that everything that was discussed tonight, I think is going to fall under that umbrella of global warming, climate change, the Resiliency Act, and the work you're doing.
Well, we're trying to keep it all together and it's a lot of pieces in motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got a question and maybe a statement, but if we're trying to develop a plan, and that's what this looks like we're trying to do to address the climate resiliency, can it be something really simple? Because I'm a pretty simple guy and I like to look at things really simple. Take flooding, for example. Can a lot of that planning be addressed in the wetlands and the habitat we were talking about earlier? you know, if we're planning development and things like that, it would seem like, you know, because most of the wetlands are gonna be in areas that might be potentially flooded. And then another example that I was thinking about in relation to wildfire, is there ideas where in planning for development, for mainly new development, it's kind of gonna be difficult for existing development, for like setbacks for where flammable materials can be, you know, would be too close to where developments would be, like commercial or residential developments, make sure that there is a buffer, you know, of where the vegetation is clear. I know they do a lot of that in the other state I mentioned earlier, where you had certain, you know, 60-foot, you know, distances, let's say, around a residence where they had to be clear of flammable vegetation. I just asked the question, if we're looking at planning, is that something that could be, you know, incorporated into that plan to address these mandates that the state's putting down, you know, in these various bills that they send down?
Yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, of course, it's must be relevant and important to you know, the stakeholders in Mason County, right? So defensible space, certainly a fire-wise planning, absolutely some best management, there's some best management practices, and also access and, you know, access to water, but also multiple evacuation routes should it be needed. Those are all things that can be, you know, it starts with policy, which is kind of your legal basis for adopting regulations, zoning, subdivision regulations, as it would apply to reducing, you know, potential impacts to a wildfire, and creating, you know, routes for people to get out, and also adopting standards to, you know, for defensible space. Yeah, and, you know, all those types of things can be baked into policy, then baked into regulations to protect the county from, you know, the worst that could happen absent those policies and regulations.
Right, okay. Okay, Julianne?
Thank you. I wanted to say that one of my biggest concerns when it comes to climate planning is, will the actions that we take be sufficient to meet the challenges ahead and protect the most life possible?
All right, thank you. Ken?
I'm sorry, I wasn't done.
Oh, you weren't? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, and to speak to one of the points that Karen just brought up, I'm concerned about disparate impacts by race, economic class, disability, gender, age, and so on. And those really need to be considered, which is one of the reasons I brought up environmental justice, climate justice being a close cousin to that, of course. I'm also concerned about losing our climate resiliency. One of the best tools that we have for climate resiliency, particularly in Mason County, is our legacy forests, meaning our oldest, most biodiverse forests that we have left in Mason County. For the most part, those are second growth forests, and those are getting currently clear-cut logged against the will of even elected officials and community members. So I think in terms of an asset of great importance, legacy forest is what I'd say, Aaron. And then in terms of areas of concern, in addition to what's already said, it's not just wildfire, but it's wildfire smoke, which in many cases doesn't even come from fires near us. So it's a different kind of planning that needs to be done. Heat waves, ocean acidification, that has a really big impact on, say, the oyster industry, and also the rising heat in the waters having a big impact on salmon, and also climate impacts for our hunters. I'm hearing from a lot of the hunters in the community that there's so many more ticks, for example, on the elk, and that's due to climate change. Concerns about sea level rise, landslides, and flooding and fire are kind of two halves of the same coin. And one of the best ways to mitigate that is with healthy soils and healthy forests. And so I really think that needs to be part of how we're thinking about these things. And when it comes to legacy forests, I just want to add, and just in general, like thinking about cultural resources, particularly for tribal folks, as well as economic impacts of climate change, not just on the aquaculture industry, but also the ways that forests have been replanted as plantations are struggling in climate change. And so we can't just do business as usual. We have to think about new ways of doing things. And then also considering, given the social service needs of our county, there's really big mental health impacts. There's so many studies, speaking of best available science, that being around intact forests is really good for mental health. And I'm concerned about losing resiliency while climate change makes people's lives harder, and while the cost of living is increased, and losing our resiliency to even, when I don't want to see all these crises happening at once, environmental crises, economic crises, mental health crises, because they compound each other, and it would be best to think about things that mitigate all of those together, which is one reason I care very much about forests. And then my final point is about what can we do to shorten our supply chains so that we're less vulnerable to supply chain disruptions? So how are we producing and manufacturing and processing food, shelter, healthcare, like the basic needs, like not luxury items, but things that every human being needs to survive? How are we shortening those supply chains so everything is happening here? And that also goes back to the employment piece of it. And how do we do it in a sustainable way so that we're not, as someone mentioned, losing the reasons that we love living here and why we choose to be here and stay here. Thank you.
Julianne, could you just expand on the supply chain? You say shortened. Do you mean shortened as in, okay, I'm gonna pretend it comes from China today. Does it then need to come from North or South America? Does it need to come from the United States? Is it internal to Washington? Or do I have a garden in my backyard? And there's some extremes in there, but when you start to try and put I'll say a geographic space on this, what's that space? Is it the Pacific Northwest? Is it the continental 48? Is it North America?
I wouldn't say that I am proposing a specific, like, strict policy. All county
Yeah.
buildings must be constructed within 500 miles or whatever. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's more of a general principle, but I'd like to see everything within Mason County.
Okay.
I want to see us be able to take care of ourselves, because one, we saw in the pandemic what happened when things couldn't get to our stores. We all experienced what it was like not to have toilet paper or cleaning supplies or any of that. And also because when I was in the community emergency response training, the CERT training, we were taught that all the surrounding counties, like if there's a tsunami, they're coming to Mason County. So we need to not only be able to take care of ourselves, but we also need to be able to take care of any refugees who are headed our area looking for protection from us.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that having a geographic, some idea of what you're thinking about, that helps a lot. Thank you.
All right, so Ken's been patiently waiting. You got the floor, Ken.
Okay, thank you, folks. Julianne touched on three of the things that I wanted to mention. I worked 30 years for the U.S. Forest Service here in Mason County on the Olympic National Forest. And of course, one of my biggest concerns is wildfire. A couple of the other things are tidal change and then landslide hazard areas. Those are my three greatest areas of concern. And it's already been touched on, but I'll second it or third it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Unless you're done, are you done?
Mr. Chair, I just was hoping to understand better a little bit about tidal changes. Is that just really more flood risk?
Sea level rise.
Okay, gotcha.
All right.
And maybe king tides with that.
Okay.
All right, well,
So Aaron, as we look at the climate resiliency, is there a set of planning factors that we are to consider, such as an engineer, you plan for a 50, 100, 200-year flood or whatever? Are there set planning factors as the amount of, temperature increase and over what time period, the amount of acidity in the rain, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What's the breadth of things we have to plan for, and what is the level we plan to?
It's a good question. And, I'm going to couch that by saying that a lot of these new requirements by the state, we're, to quote another client local in Mason County, I hope he doesn't mind, we're kind of building the plane in the air. And,
Good example.
at the time, at the time this legislation came out, Commerce really wasn't quite sure how to identify all the impacts and all the data that should go into it. And so I don't have a clear answer. And certainly there's the 100-year floodplain, but in terms of, the outlook on ocean acidification, there's a lot of data out there that we're gonna, source. And Commerce has provided some resources to do that. And we need to source it and find out what's up, what the data says and what the community is concerned about. And we mash all that together and devise policies and implementation actions and, potentially alter your capital improvement plan to address those, identified through data, identified through public input. So there's a lot of modeling out there and potential impacts. We don't have crystal balls, but there's data that indicates certain things we should plan for. And y'all, I think, did a great job of identifying what some of those key issues could be for Mason County. It's a great starting point.
But if I may, so Mike here is a police officer on the road, and Will's told to drive to conditions. Now, drive to conditions in my mind may be very different than drive to conditions in Bob's mind, but we're both on the road. Okay? My number one concern on climate planning is there's no set of clear requirements. So we, Mason County, are going to go down a road on planning. But what's Thurston doing, or Jefferson, or Grace Harbor, or Pierce? Where are we as a state aligned to a common goal so we can objectively say, yes, we are meeting expectations? How do we objectively start to seek funding for these things when we're all targeting, if you will, a different speed, to use the car analogy? And I think that's my number one concern under climate planning. I think the list is fantastic on topics, but how do you handle that if there's no criterion that at the state level? I mean, we could go forward and say, okay, we're going to assume it's temperature is going to increase, I don't know, 3 degrees Fahrenheit every 10 years. And we have a great plan to address it. But what happens when that goes to the state and the state says, well, it's now 3.5? I don't know. I'm just saying that having criterion, that's my number one concern with the planning. We don't have a set of requirements. It's going to be very hard to know if we meet the objective.
Well, I will say that the data sets out there are, I think all the counties are going to be looking to the same sources of data to plan ahead.
We all interpret different, if I may. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm just concerned that we could have a really good plan and the next reviewer up the chain goes, I don't think so.
I don't share that concern.
Okay.
With Commerce being our, they're the reviewers of our plan. And unlike ecology, who ultimately, when we update our shoreline master program, ecology ultimately ends up, like, once we adopt it, then they also review and adopt. And Commerce, it's not that way. They give you advice, they give you, they'll give you support.
They have a menu of different types of
Yeah,
measures that.
But they do
Okay.
not mandate. that
So there
once we
is something
adopt-
to guide us there.
There's
Okay.
guidance measures that.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Up on what we
'Cause
adopt.
I'm not hearing we have hard
No, it
requirements.
sounds like, almost like leaving
So
every
we do
county.
something until somebody tells us we can't.
Yes, we will
Okay.
be subject to appeal and then,
Okay.
and so.
Fine, so we make our,
So
okay.
the best thing that you
All right.
guys can do is set the board up for success as far as, and Marissa and I are relying on SCJ, who are relying on growth, who are the Department of Commerce's staff to guide us in our documenting. And so, Marissa and I's job is to, if you guys start going down a path that we think this could set us up
Pull
for
us back.
not for an appeal, because we can't do anything about whether or not someone appeals us. But when we're appealed, assuming somebody it's likely, 50% chance that we will set ourselves up for under an appeal, we would be able to support that, and we think we would prevail in a growth management hearings board case.
Okay.
That's what Marissa and I's job is to do, to make sure you guys don't go down a path that we think we can't, if we get appealed, we don't think we can prevail in that
Okay.
appeal.
Thank you. Think that helps.
Okay, has everyone had their say? Cause I'm sure staff wants to go home. All right, hearing none, anything from the, yes, Jeff?
This is a question, I'm looking at the land use, so it's not related to the SC document per se.
Mhm.
But part of it is I'm bringing myself up to speed on land use things, acreage and capacity and different things like this. Question I have, just some general questions and staff may not know, but I notice there's a lot of resource, at least coded by the assessor's office, that are coded as forest resource or agricultural resource lands. But yet in some cases, we do flag it as that. And in a lot of cases, we don't. It's still RR5, like rural residential 5. So my question is kind of two-part. One is, when we're tallying up the acreage and the capacity we have as a county for RR5, as an example, are we taking what shows RR5, like, on the GIS? Or are we using the assessor database to come back the other way and say, well, we have this much acreage in forest, this much acre designated forest, this much area in agriculture, that kind of thing?
So, zoning under the planning department is one thing, and that's what allows potential uses.
Right.
The tax assessor rules, it could be RR5, but it's under forestry, like the property owner has it in
Right.
not in long-term
designated.
forest. That's an actual zoning.
Yeah.
thing, but in forestry.
Yeah.
And so it's taxed that way, and they're not paying taxes on it now,
Right.
but they would pay back taxes, et cetera, if they, that
Right.
sort of thing. We look at the zoning data for land use, for growth potentials. We don't look at, it doesn't matter what the assessor tax rules say for forestry. Because that could be converted at any point in time.
True, it can be converted, but it may not be converted either. So I'm saying on the one, as an example, let's just take 1 square mile, one section, okay? There's a whole, when you look at the RR5, it looks like it's almost all RR5. But then we start looking at, there's maybe 120 acres of it, agriculture or timber. So you can't really say that you have the capacity to put housing in. Because you don't, it doesn't exist.
That's not true. I mean, I could have 120 acres of RR5 and say I'm passing that on to my great grandchildren that I don't have right now.
Right.
And so so I don't see it any differently than that. Green Diamond or Mankey or any of the forestry, they can, and they do, they can decide to sell that and stop logging and go straight into selling it for subdivision.
Okay,
At any point in time, and we're not gonna go and ask.
so,
every person
from the county's, so if I understand it correctly, so from the county's point of view. Regardless of its assessor flagging. It's if it's RR5, it's RR5
Correct.
across the board, so. What triggers it, where, when you flag it as zoned agriculture versus people saying they designate agriculture?
Well, we do have a zoning designation for ag.
That's,
That is sometimes similar, or, sometimes our assessor data matches our zoning,
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't.
no, but I'm saying, when somebody is zoned, like I'm looking at one family's property, and I noticed that some of the parcels are agricultural, it's all coded in the assessor side as agriculture, but only 1 10-acre or 1 20-acre chunk is actually zoned agriculture, the rest is RR5.
Okay.
How does that?
We would see it as those RR5 pieces as has the density potential.
Okay,
And the only point that's important for everyone to understand is that our urban growth areas where we are sending the higher density development,
right,
and then the rural areas that, have the RR5 as kind of the minimum, that we can show commerce, that we can meet our 20-year growth potential. So OFM, the Office of Financial Management, does the population projections. We, Mason County, pick the medium, so there's a low, medium, and high likelihood of population density. Mariah and I know because she does our census and sends to OFM every year. They're very good at predicting what our future potential is. So we have a 20-year growth projection, and we could easily, unfortunately for those of us who live in Mason County, we could easily accommodate the growth over the next 20 years. Without even having to expand our current urban growth boundaries.
right, no,
So when we look at it for purposes of growth, RR5, we know that there's nowhere near in the next 20 years are those zoned properties going to be developed. So it's I'm not understanding your point.
well, and it's fine, at least I got one side of the thing answered, and maybe I can clarify it by the
Yeah.
next meeting. Because philosophically, I'm having a little problem with it, so I'm trying to knock my philosophical out of it and hear what you're saying and think about what that means, because it seems a little weird to me when you're planning and you have unknowns, i.e. people's ownership and what they plan to do or don't do.
Well, I mean, you're right, it's all unknowns, and it would be impossible to go
Yeah.
and interview every property
No,
owner and
I'm
say,
not-
what are your property plans over the next 20 years? You know what I'm saying? And first of all, no one would give you the honest truth.
No, they won't.
And they don't know either.
No.
They don't know what their life is today or what's gonna happen 5 years from now, and you could have a plan, trust me, I've had a plan, and then
Yeah, I know.
shit
Plans
happens, and you're
change.
like, that ain't happening anymore.
Nope.
So, so we do the best that we can, but that is how we go off zoning, not the assessor data.
Okay.
Because it can be changed overnight. They could go to the
Yes.
assessor's office and say, we're done with the forests. And now we're gonna convert. And they'll
Right.
pay the tax.
And I appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand capacity and capability,
Yeah,
because to date, most of the growth until fairly recently, even until recently, most of the growth has always been in the rural lands, not in the
that's true,
UGs.
yes.
And that will end up changing at some point based upon,
I think as growth increases, you will see,
There's only so
But
much
then, I
RFI.
mean, there's only so much water and sewer
Yeah,
capacity
yeah.
at the city of Shelton
You're
right
right.
now, so.
That's
that-
another
that,
problem.
You know,
Mhm.
and then, yeah,
But anyway, this at least answers that, and I can leave it at that
okay.
and
All right.
make it better next time.
So is any more questions for Aaron?
Did he get all his answers? Enough answers? For questions he had?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a good start. And I'll follow up with our other team members and staff, and we'll be off to the next exciting step.
And
Like
Aaron,
herd of turtles.
can you forward these notes? Is there a way we can get a copy of those?
Send them to them.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you.
I will send them to staff, and
That'll work.
they
That'd
will
be
be
great.
disseminated.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there's nothing else.
Motion to adjourn?
Who wants to do the motion?
We'll let Brad, I second.
Okay, Brad's moved and Will seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.